Hey there, Tech Intersect listeners. Have you ever encountered naysayers claiming crypto is too volatile, a total scam, or a hacker's paradise? Well, it's time to dispel these persistent myths and reveal the truth. It's exactly why I wrote Digital Money Demystified, available now wherever books are sold. And this book is your golden ticket from being crypto curious to radiating crypto confidence. Navigate the crypto world with clarity and conquer the chaos. Get your copy today to learn about my journey, separate fact from fiction, and maybe even embark on a transformative journey yourself. Don't stop there. Enhance your learning experience exponentially. Join the DMD Insiders Membership Club. It's a gateway to premier coaching, engaging community, and unparalleled content that complements the insights in the book. Together, we'll unlock the potential of digital money and stride confidently into the future. Visit digitalmoneydemystified.com, grab your guide to the crypto universe, and become an esteemed member of our Insiders Club. Let's decode the digital dollar and invest in your crypto-savvy future right now.
The CRA was like a remedial statute because banks were discriminating. Like, right, not to pick on banks, I have plenty of bank clients. I love the banks. But like, if you think about it from a perspective of, we have programs in place to prevent discrimination, to prevent redlining. And now we're taking out the intermediaries so that people can get a fairer shake. And there's a potential there. It's like, well, let's put our efforts behind this so that can actually reach its potential. Yes, there's like people who are going to be fraudsters and scammers and just there for the quick buck. But it's just like, let's help it actually meet its potential so that going forward, we don't have programs like the CRA because like there was no intermediary, if people so choose, to discriminate, like, right? Or at least like we're just pushing intermediaries a little bit further. So maybe you don't totally get rid of the intermediaries, but if you have competition, you have other people trying to push the envelope and doing it in a way that's like a more fairer, more accessible product that at least pushes the envelope, which I think is greater for society, is greater for people that look like you and me.
Welcome to Tech Intersect. I'm your host, Tonya Evans, and my life and work exist at the heart of law, business, and technology. Yeah, I've earned a few fancy titles and degrees over the years, but the bottom line is I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and lifelong learner. And I'm really excited that you've joined me on this journey. So what is Tech Intersect? Well, it's authentic, empowering conversations with really interesting guests who demystify complex topics to prepare you for the future, because your future is now. And it exists where law, business, and tech intersect. Get ready to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to this latest episode of the Tech Intersect Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Tonya Evans. I'm really excited to have a special guest on the show today. We move in the same circles, but we usually just see each other evidently on social media, LinkedIn, and in the inbox, because that's how busy this amazing and dynamic woman is. Tiffany J, Smith, partner at Wilmer Hale in New York, has over a decade of experience advising and representing broker-dealers and other financial institutions and financial technology companies as well. Talks about and advises on compliance with federal securities laws, regulations, the rules of self-regulatory organizations or SROs, and with respect to broker-dealer regulatory compliance. And I'm very fascinated by her background and experience in this space in particular. Tiffany often advises clients on newly adopted rules, areas of increased regulatory focus, and certainly market access. So that includes securities trading, market activities, shorts, the rules, the issuer rules on repurchases. And also she has experience advising clients on regulatory implications of new and emerging technology. So this was the first time I recall connecting with Tiffany, and she can share from her perspective as well, was, I believe, a conference in DC at my alma mater, the Howard University School of Law. Can't stop the hustle. And we were talking about a range of things dealing with new technologies, intellectual property. And she continues to move very progressively as a first mover in the space, building a dynamic practice. So when I saw the update on the New York Department of Financial Services oversight of virtual currencies, and I think I saw Wilmer Hale's newsletter, there was a recent CLE. I knew I had to have Tiffany on to explore and expound further on what the changes are. Final point here before I bring on our guest. On September 18th, the NYDFS superintendent, Adrian Harris, issued this update on an ongoing initiative to strengthen DFS oversight of virtual currency. So we will talk about all of that and more in a moment. But first, Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Professor Evans. It's great to see you virtually. And I've been following you via all types of social media, but we haven't seen each other in years. So great to be connected again.
I know. There was that little thing called the pandemonium. It wouldn't let us be great for a few years, but we are back. And what I wanted to start with, could you give the listeners and our viewers a brief overview of your journey into traditional finance, TradFi, and what drew you specifically to the world of crypto regulation?
Sure, happy to. So my journey into TradFi actually starts prior to law school. So I was one of the random teenagers who was like obsessed with the stock market and actually thought I wanted to be an investment banker. So I was actually a finance major in undergrad. We had the first .com bubble burst and the economy was bad. So I said, oh, maybe finance isn't the best time. I'll go into law. And I went to law school and during law school, I worked for a broker dealer, still having the interest in like financial regulation and like compliance. And really from the sense of like, how do things work? How does trading work? As opposed to more like investigations or corporate deals, like, right. And so I kind of like lucked into it in that like, I literally described a telephone conversation I had at work to my professor and said, hey, I've been focusing on corporate work because, in law school, it's like litigation or corporate. But I actually heard this call where my boss said that they wanted to call their outside counsel about this issue. What type of lawyer is this? What type of practice? And he said, broker dealer. I'm like, well, it seems so obvious, but yet you don't really hear about that in law school. So fast forward, I joined Wilmer, I joined the broker dealer group, and I always focus on the intersection between financial regulations and technology. So fintech before it was even called fintech, like, right? And so really like the old apps, how to use technology to trade securities. Then you had crypto, like, right? And so it was a natural progression in that technology forward, you still, because of the SEC's broad view about crypto assets, like all of the things I've been doing for the past 15 years are all super relevant. And because like no one knew what a broker dealer attorney is, that particular body of law is something that a lot of people actually don't know about, but actually is in like high demand now. I say I'm a crypto attorney now, and they're like, oh, everyone's like, great. But it's really the same exact law that I've become an expert on through TradFi companies for the last 15 years.
That's really fascinating. I love a good pivot story. It makes me think of my own origin story or kind of like hero's journey into this space, where it's definitely uncharted. We didn't have the language at the time, but you had the underlying skills. First of all, you're intellectually curious. You are ahead of the curve on so many things. You have a really illustrious background, but you also leave space for the magic, the intellectual curiosity, leveraging your existing skills to be able to pivot to what is relevant for you, for your firm, and for your clients. And I think that distinguishes you and attorneys like you when you're focused on problem solving.
Yep.
So I guess so much of your background primed you well for so many of the challenges that your clients are facing now. At a high level, what are some of the things that it's like, okay, my background is well suited for this, even if we don't have a name for it yet?
So the challenges now are plentiful. Like now the majority of my clients now are in the crypto space. And I should mention, like, I understood financial regulation and did that with TradFi clients for a large number of years. But the missing point, I think I just want to highlight this because like, I think this is critical, especially if you're going to provide like wise counsel to your clients. On my own, going back 3 years ago, I made a commitment to myself that every day I was going to spend a certain amount of time getting up to speed on crypto. I was going to read these certain newsletters, listen to these podcasts, right? And so it was a journey and like kind of like, I think about it, 10,000 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, right. So it's the same thing. So it's like, you might be interested in something, like, right. But if you're going to pivot, you need to put the work in. You can't just wake up and say, oh, I want to represent crypto companies. Like, that's not how things work. So my clients now are like all over the crypto sector. I represent crypto issuers, crypto platforms, infrastructure providers, like Web3 companies, and like VCs that invest in crypto. And historically, my practice has always been like regulatory counseling. Now, like with the shift of SEC enforcement and now litigation, I've represented clients in enforcement investigations. We're currently in litigation for one client. And one of, I think, the most interesting parts of my job is the policy part, because now we're thinking about like, how should crypto be regulated? And there's a bunch of proposed bills. And so like, I know you testified, but previously we kind of ghost wrote like sometimes bills, sometimes talking points for our clients' lobbyists to go and talk into members of Congress, and actually had the privilege of actually going as an expert to Congress for the House Financial Services Committee and Senate Ag, and just kind of be there as like a nonpartisan expert to answer members' questions. Like, right. So I did that a number of times before the FIT Act was passed. So it's a very broad practice, but I think now like crypto is still novel. We don't really have the regulatory structure. So people who know regulation, understand technology, there's a lot, we need to actually be in the room to help make sure that things are shaped in a way to allow the industry to flourish.
Scott, could you design a video game?
I could make you a hypothetical one. If I took some random genres, mechanics, maybe blended them together, and created a new hypothetical game.
Now that would make a great podcast.
Undoubtedly.
So what would you make? Something original and exciting? A Dark Souls city builder? A co-op roguelike?
Everything. All of that. We could use the Nemesis system and put it in a first-person shooter. And we could have a loot system with survival mechanics and motion controls. And maybe you could... I don't know, save a kingdom from some out-of-control toasters. What about party?
Catch the Gaming Blender on all your favourite podcast platforms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's something that I have enjoyed as well, especially as an academic. I don't have a particular dog in the fight other than people getting the proper education, personally or professionally, whether you're an investor or you are a business leader, you're an entrepreneur, startup founder, to really get a solid foundation so that you can make good choices. But the other side of that, to your point, is engaging or at least providing the context for legislators who are going to enact enabling legislation or amendments to enabling legislation for agencies to move forward, right? That idea of having the brick and the mortar come together so that you have the framework, but also the subject matter experts that move forward on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like for as long as I've been in the space for 6-7 years now, the early conversations on the Hill were like, what is this thing on? Right. And I'm finding now that the conversations are far less about that. There's just so much information and more about normatively, to your point, what should exist. We have, this alphabet soup of committees and subcommittees kind of wrangling for position. We see the same thing on the executive side as well. We see a lot of things ultimately playing themselves out in the judicial branch. And that's a feature, not a bug of our system. But in the meantime, what are your clients supposed to do? Right. Yeah. And so I imagine even to prepare yourself to pivot in this way, you had to face your own, I know I certainly did, face your own myths, concerns as a matter of risk mitigation for yourself. What are some of the myths and the ways that you demystified the space for yourself?
I think one of the biggest myths is that crypto is only for scammers and that like it's always used for nefarious purposes, like, right. Mm. And so like just getting educated. I remember I heard this quote like some years back and someone said like, I've met people who love crypto. I've met people who hate crypto. Right. I've never met anyone who's hated crypto who understood it. Mm. Most people, I guess people are risk averse. They don't like new things. They want to keep the status quo. For me, it was really digging in, understanding the potential, the financial inclusion part. Like as someone who my first job, when I was in law school, I worked for a bank. And when you work for a bank, banks are subject to the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, right? I had my securities licenses. So I can't remember if it's part of the bank training or my securities licenses, but I learned about the CRA, like, right? And so the CRA was like a remedial statute because banks were discriminating. Like, right, not to pick on banks. I have plenty of bank clients. I love the banks. But like, if you think about it from a perspective of like, we have programs in place to prevent discrimination, to prevent redlining. And now we're taking out the intermediaries so that people can get a fairer shake. And then you think about people who normally don't get a fairer shake, like, right?
Right.
And there's a potential there. It's like, well, let's put our efforts behind this so that can actually reach its potential. Yes, there's like people who are going to be fraudsters and scammers and just there for the quick buck. But it's just like, let's help it actually meet its potential so that going forward, we don't have programs like the CRA because like there was no intermediary, if people so choose, to discriminate, like, right? Or at least like we're just pushing intermediaries a little bit further. So I think about Venmo, and then you had Zelle. Zelle is the banks, like, right? And you think about fintechs and like just generally like their role. So maybe you don't totally get rid of the intermediaries, but if you have competition, you have other people trying to push the envelope and doing it in a way that's like a more fairer, more accessible product that at least pushes the envelope, which I think is greater for society, is greater for people that look like you and me.
It's a great point about competition. It makes me think of all of the various ways that you alluded to exchange value, right? Depending upon the facts and circumstances. Just because I have a credit card doesn't mean on occasion I don't use cash. I have cash. Sometimes I need a wire transfer. Sometimes I can ACH it. Sometimes I have to exchange into local currency. So there's just range, this plethora of opportunities. This is one part of that. And some cryptocurrencies don't function well as a medium of exchange today. And that's the interesting nature of a programmable asset that I think challenges and confounds regulators and legislators in the space as well. Obviously, we've had securities laws since the 40s. And there have been lots of exotic products that have come and gone. Sometimes they buckled, but they didn't break.
Correct.
At this moment in time, we might actually be breaking them in the sense of something that's programmable, but we have what we have until we have something different. So for attorneys like you saying, what do we have? It's kind of a both and. Let's advise our clients to the best of our ability and also help those who are making the laws today that will impact clients in the future more amenable to something that, calibrates between supporting innovation, supporting business here in the United States and abroad in the United States, and then also obviously protecting consumers and investors. Have you ever found yourself puzzled, wondering if cryptocurrency is just a fleeting trend, a scam, or perhaps the future? Hi, I'm Dr. Tonya Evans, and I'm here to introduce you to my new book, Digital Money Demystified, your ultimate guide to deciphering the crypto maze. As a legal policy and crypto education expert, I've crafted this book to cut through the chaos, debunk the myths, and tackle the FUD. That's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. From captivating headlines to meticulously sourced data, I guide you through the promises and the pitfalls of digital assets. With 12 chapters and 10 myths dispelled, Digital Money Demystified is designed for investors, business owners, and professionals eager to navigate the digital economy. It's more than just a book. It's a tool for economic empowerment that directs you safely and confidently from cash to crypto. Say goodbye to bewilderment and hello to enlightenment. Transform from crypto curious to confident. Sidestep those scammers and embrace the future of work, wealth, and creativity. Grab your copy of Digital Money Demystified today at the book's companion website, digitalmoneydemystified.com, or wherever books are sold. This is the right book, the right voice at the right time. Don't miss out on the digital revolution. Stop by digitalmoneydemystified.com now. Final kind of broad brush question. When we look at the present, how would you describe the current stance of U.S. regulation of cryptographically secured assets? It kind of seems very complex here because we have so many stakeholders. When I compare it to other countries that maybe only have one regulator or they just can be more nimble. So what are we faced with today in terms of regulation?
As you alluded to, patchwork, piecemeal, like, right? Because we
Right.
have Like it's the first is the question as to who has jurisdiction, like, right?
Mm.
And so I don't want to say hostile, but comparatively, I think we are hostile, like, right? Like, yes, there's a bunch of bills passing, like, right? But we don't really have like a comprehensive regulatory framework at the federal level for crypto assets. There's just a lot of questions about who has jurisdiction. And as a result, in the interim, you're basically stifling businesses. You're not allowing innovation. I feel like hostile is too strong of a word, but it's definitely not facilitating the innovation and allowing it to flourish.
Yeah, I had to navigate this topic, as you mentioned earlier, before the House Financial Services Subcommittee on digital assets, et cetera. And in addition to teaching blockchain, crypto, and law classes and intellectual property classes, I also teach administrative law. So it was very interesting to go into the morass of what folks title regulation by enforcement, kind of unpack what that means, to talk about the ways that the SEC, for example, is empowered, as many agencies are, through both enforcement and rulemaking, and their ability to use their discretion to do one or the other. When you have selective enforcement, we have the party before the SEC and then we get a ruling or a determination, and everybody else is left to read the tea leaves of what it might mean for them, as opposed to rulemakings that would set the stage for an entire industry or ecosystem. So my hope for the future is that we get to that point. But again, you have to dance with who brung you. And this is where we are today. Focusing on New York, kind of transitioning to a specific state. If my memory serves me correctly, New York was one of the first, if not the first, to have some type of regulation. It makes me think of the bit license, right? So that was around, wasn't a particular success. I think it was very expensive, took a lot of time. It took years before I could know like 1, 2, or 3 entities that even had a bit license. And the challenge for those involved in financial technology that is not just local or regional or national, but international. Fast forward now to the New York DFS's oversight over virtual currencies. What is the oversight announcement? How is it moving in terms of development? And then we'll kind of get to what is the impact, the reverberating impact of what New York does on the rest of the states and maybe at the federal level.
So as you mentioned, New York, has been a leader in the space. At the state level, most crypto companies are regulated as money services businesses, kind of like Western Union. And so New York was a leader because they had a crypto-specific regulatory structure. This year, the Department of Financial Services, which administers the bit license, has been very active. And I think that we first connected like in another regarding a proposal from another New York entity. So the New York AG actually put out proposed legislation that would regulate crypto back in May. And we'll see where that goes. There's been a lot of states who've proposed bills. And California is another great example. Like they proposed a very draconian bill. I believe it was like last year before. It didn't pass. So we'll see if that goes. But what actually has like direct impact is what the Department of Financial Services does, because they currently license a number of entities either as bit licensees or as New York limited trust companies. And so back on the 18th, they propose new guidance, and it's currently open for comment, open for the next couple of weeks. But they did a few things. First, like New York has what's called a green list, and it's a list of assets where folks are allowed to transact, folks meaning bit licensees. So New York, licensed firms are allowed to transact in these assets without getting specific approval from DFS. And so previously, there were about 20 assets on that bit license. They created a new bit license that they published on the 18th. They pared it down to 8. So from 20 to 8. And it includes basically Bitcoin, ETH, and then like 6 stable coins that are issued by DFS. So that's like point 1. Point 2 is there's also a green list policy by which if you're a company, you are a bit licensee and you want to list assets, you can list them pursuant to a process without getting specific authorization. And they kind of revised the standard for that process, making a requirement for companies to redo their policies and procedures. And then the last thing they did was they're requiring what's called a delisting policy. And so when you have an asset, you decide to remove it from your platform. Previously, there was no policy that governed that. And now it's a requirement to have a delisting policy. If you think about it, like there's lots of repercussions of delisting an asset. Good examples, like I think there were articles like when Ripple was suddenly delisted when the SEC filed its lawsuit. So you have potential customer harm that comes into play. So they really focus on safety and soundness and making sure that like even if assets are delisted for what can happen for a number of different reasons, customers are protected.
That's really fascinating. And I think there were some lessons learned when they first kind of stumbled forward. And I think the iterative process that we see over on the tech side is also something that we necessarily see on the legal side as well. And it makes me think that New York will continue to be a leader in that regard. It would be interesting to see once the comments come back in, how the structure changes or morphs. Without them saying it, it's very much giving regulatory sandbox. It almost is like a bad way to describe it. And I know that folks in the industry, kind of on both sides at this point, don't even want to hear the term. But it makes me think that creating space for innovation that is safe, legal, and compliant is the way to go by any name. So I look forward to, keeping this at the forefront. I think people really need to understand the ways in which regulators are trying to make sense of this and also make room. And we will see. It's obviously not a perfect science. If we had it to do from the beginning today, it would look a lot different.
Absolutely.
But it is, again, what it is. Final thing for you, and then I'll let you get back to this life. You got to get back to your reading. I'm going to go take a nap. This is what academics do. And then we tell you what you should do through our law review articles, and then we go take a walk. But peering in kind of the future, no, I'm not big on predictions per se, but you've had your finger on the pulse for this for a long time. So, we're coming into a political cycle. It's not likely, although I'm always cautiously optimistic of what happens, but maybe getting past 2024, what are some of the things that would make sense for the ecosystem as a matter of regulation, that if you had your way, what would that look like in the next 5 years?
If I had my way. So one, I think getting crypto regulation passed by Congress is a tall order. So if I had my way in dealing with, like being someone who deals with companies, like people who are trying to grapple through these issues today, my wish would be for the CFTC and the SEC to come together and like use all of their exemptive and other types of authority to create a framework for crypto assets. Like that is like, I'm totally dreaming,
yeah,
right?
Just dreaming.
But, and there's like some authority questions there, like, right, the CFTC, doesn't have authority for the spot market. So maybe we'll need like some other mechanism to give them authority, maybe a presidential order, like, I don't know. But like, when I'm thinking about like the potential here and just how Congress works and the fact that this is such a bipartisan issue, in order for this to flourish and to get back to what we're talking about, the potential, I would like the SEC, the CFTC, the two like primary like regulators for crypto to come together and figure out a regulatory scheme.
Fantastic. All right. So for listeners, especially those in financial technology or fintech related sectors, you have a phenomenal array of resources at your firm. Can you, in closing, just let folks know how they can learn more about you, your work, and the resources that people can use in order to begin to figure out this regulatory maze, ensure compliance, and maximize the potential of crypto innovation?
Absolutely. So you can find me at the WilmerHale website. So www.wilmerhale.com. My profile is there as well as LinkedIn. And on the WilmerHale website, we have a crypto part of the website where we talk about, we can find all of our past articles and also sign up for our crypto currently webinars and events. So we have, like, we use the tagline crypto currently. We do a lot of webinars, like we did one last week just about the new DFS guidance. And we're going to be putting out a client alert within the next day or two about that guidance. So that's where you can see our old articles and get signed up to get on our listserv.
Outstanding. Tiffany J. Smith, it's a pleasure as always. I love how you're moving and building in this space. I'm a ready resource, and I'm going to need you in January to come talk to my students.
Absolutely.
Okay, there you go. There you have it. This is my first guest speaker for my class in January. Tiffany, I appreciate you, and I look forward to our next opportunity to connect.
Thanks so much for having me, Professor Evans.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tech Intersect podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you love it, please tell the world. If not, go ahead and tell me. And in either case, drop a comment or ping me on social media at IPProfEvans with the hashtag Tech Intersect. And finally, a quick reminder on digital safety. There are a lot of scammers out there impersonating me and others, and I need your help. Now hear this, and remember, I will never slide into your DMs to say peace and blessings or hey, and I will never reach out to solicit your time or your money on social media like ever. I'm not a trader. I am an educator and an attorney licensed in 4 states. Thank you very much. I'm here to inform, inspire, and empower. No cap and definitely no Forex. So be careful, make good choices, and remember, I developed an entire free masterclass about the topic of digital safety in the crypto space. So check out secureyourcryptobag.com for more information. That's secureyourcryptobag.com. All right, that's all for this episode. Until next time, continue to shine.